now is Ambassador Nick Burns, the former Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, who is now at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and Jeremy Bash, the former Chief of Staff, both at the CIA and the Department of Defense during the Obama administration, also an MSNBC national security analyst. Welcome, both of you. So first of all, we have been told that the meeting has now ended. When they first met at the G20 earlier today, before their one-on-one session, I wanted to show you a little video of the initial handshake when these two men first met, and then you'll see a Trump backslap of Vladimir Putin. So it's really kind of interesting the way that President Trump reaches out and tries to sort of slap him. It's a two-handed, and there's the backslap. Very friendly. Nick Burns, you've actually been in meetings with Vladimir Putin, I guess when you were ambassador to NATO, perhaps, in a previous life. How is Putin reading Trump, do you think, from what we know of Vladimir Putin, the former KGB colonel?
Well, we know a lot about Vladimir Putin. He's astute, he's intelligent, he's very experienced, and he's opportunistic. And obviously, he wants what President Trump wants out of this first meeting. It's good that it went for 2.5 hours. They need to get to know each other and learn to communicate effectively because, as you know, Andrea, there'll be crises, misunderstandings ahead of them. They're going to have to be able to get on the phone and work things out. So that, I thought, was the primary reason for this meeting. But I hope President Trump raised the Ukraine issue, the sanctions. I hope he raised Russia's cyber attack on our election and the deep sentiment in the Congress that Russia needs to be sanctioned for that. And I'll bet they talked about Syria because you saw Rex Tillerson 2 days ago signal that the United States and Russia have been talking about how to end the war there. So they appear to have had a full discussion. We'll see what the details are.
And what we also see from Russia, Nick and Jeremy, is that Russia only 2 days ago blocked us from proceeding at the Security Council with a simple resolution condemning North Korea for launching an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time in, again, violation of UN sanctions.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and Nick can add. It's unclear why Russia would want to block our efforts to isolate North Korea. After all, North Korea crossed this critical 3,000-mile threshold where they now have a missile that could potentially reach Alaska, maybe even Hawaii. And once they miniaturize that nuclear weapon, that could really put American cities in grave danger. It's unclear why Russia would do that. Just to loop back to the length of the meeting, I agree with Nick. I think it's good that the leaders talked. I do worry a little bit that the leaders will come out and say that the relationship is solidified, it's on a strong path. I think we have to start from a little bit of a different premise. I think we have to start from the premise that Russia is our adversary, that Russia is playing a very unproductive role in Europe, that Russia is playing currently an unproductive role in Syria, and that we have to take them on more forcefully, not to mention the fact that we have a consensus intelligence assessment that says that they tried to undermine the most precious thing we have, our own election process. And so I think unless the president is tough on Putin in this first meeting and communicates that in the meeting and out of the meeting, I don't think this is a win for the United States.
What about the fact that the president, as recently as yesterday, in response to Hallie Jackson at the news conference, was expressing doubts that it was just Russia alone, it could have been anybody who had hacked the election, and demeaning the intelligence community by bringing up the faulty, tragically faulty assessment 15-some years ago on WMD in Iraq? Why does this president have such a problem criticizing Vladimir Putin?
Well, that's the $64 trillion question, and I agree with Jeremy. Russia is an adversary of the United States. What we know about Putin is that he is rational, and he's brutal and cynical, but he also responds to power and strength. And so Jeremy's right. I would hope that what President Trump did in this meeting, in addition to getting to know him, was to say, we're not moving an inch on the Ukraine sanctions. We're going to keep them on you until you withdraw your military forces and comply with the Minsk agreements. And we're certainly now going to put additional sanctions on you because you interfered in our elections. And if you do it again, there are going to be severe consequences. Putin understands that. I think he would not understand, or maybe he'd understand all too well, a weaker approach he might think he could take advantage of Donald Trump. So I hope that's the kind of meeting they have. And it's good that they might have talked about Syria, if that was one reason for the length of this. We've got to be careful there, too. We don't want to be aligned with Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah in a power play in Syria. If we can help to end the war and help refugees, that's good. But we shouldn't be supporting Russia and Iranian interests to gain control of major parts of Syria.
And in fact, Jeremy, one of the points that General Clapper was saying is that the people signing this ceasefire, if that is what they're about to announce, are not the combatants, not all the combatants, not several of the factions that neither Russia nor the U.S. controls.
That's right. Our primary objective in Syria is to take on ISIS, to support airstrikes and to support ground. The Syrian Democratic Forces, who we've trained and equipped on the ground, Arab forces, Kurdish forces, to take on Raqqa and to take out ISIS's command and control. What we've seen in the last several weeks is that Syrian air forces have fired on those, quote, SDF forces, our allies on the ground. Those Syrian air forces are backed by Russia. Russia effectively controls the skies over Syria in certain parts because they have integrated air defenses, and they have given cover to the Assad regime, in effect, to attack our counterterrorism forces. So I think the number one talking point for the president in this meeting with Putin is get out of the way while we take on ISIS. If you want to be our partner with that, please join us. But if not, please get out of the way.
And how about stopping the Syrians from using chemical weapons? You're supposed to be the guarantor of non-use of chemical weapons. Nick, you've sat down with Vladimir Putin and you've been able to assess him over the years. How is he going to read this if President Trump does not bring up the election hacking?
Oh, I think he'll consider it a major gift in this meeting. And frankly, I think he will not respect President Trump. Again, he respects people who are self-confident and strong. We know from General Clapper's interview with you, Andrea, and from his previous testimony that our intelligence community is 100% sure of what happened here. So the president's primary obligation in foreign and defense policy is defend the United States. If our elections were breached in a negative, nefarious way by the Russians, he has an obligation to raise that, as President Obama did one-on-one with Putin last autumn. And the Senate voted 97-2. Republicans and Democrats together to fully sanction the Russians. The president is going to be very exposed politically here at home, but I think guilty of a dereliction of duty, of his basic duty to defend us, if he doesn't raise this in a tough way today.
Ambassador Nick Burns, Jeremy Bash, thank you both so very much. Thanks for being with us.